approximately 20 meters. All right, guys. Well, we're going to get it started here. We're running a few minutes. Wanted to give a few minutes for some more people to join us, but I'll admit them as they come in. Let's see. So tonight's the March presentation meeting for the YCARS Club, and we have a very special guest. We have Kyle Krieg, AA0Z here with us tonight. And Craig has a really good YouTube channel as well. And it's Kyle. Is it Kyle AA0Z? Is that right, Kyle?
Yeah, AA0Z.
Okay. Yep. And then he's got a blog post, www.aa0z.com. He also
it just goes to my YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of guest appearances on a lot of the most popular YouTuber channels: Ham Radio 2.0, Ham Radio Crash Course, KMRD, Tank Radio, all those guys out there, all the big YouTubers. Kyle's a part of all of that. He's the master of Node-RED, and he's actually one of the original POTA guys before POTA was POTA. He helped kick off National Parks on the Air in 2016. So, and Kyle, I met Kyle down in Orlando last year, 2021, and I ran into him again this year, 2022, and he was kind enough to offer to come out and do a presentation for us on Node-RED. He's an accomplished contester and has a very nice contest setup and remote setup. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Kyle. Thank you again for doing this.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here. And so let me start my screen. Can you yep, you can. Let me share this screen. So what I want to do here, if I can share it, why can't I share this? There it goes. Can you see the screen now?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let me scroll this over. All right. So intro to Node-RED. So can't see a lot of you, but I'm assuming some of you, maybe more than 50%, have at least heard about Node-RED. So this presentation, we're going to do a presentation, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do some examples here, which I love being here in the shack because I can show you all the things that, I can click on the buttons and turn the rotators and do all these things. Whenever I'm at doing a presentation, live, in front of a crowd, I really don't have this ability. So it's great that I can actually show you some of these things that we have built, and you can build yourself. So we're going to get into a little bit of history and what you can do for Node-RED, what you can do with Node-RED, and then also I'm going to show you some dashboard stuff and some gotchas. So I don't know, you're recording this presentation. I would assume that the people that are interested, they can come back and watch this presentation and be like, oh yeah, Kyle told me to do this first and then to do this second. So hopefully this will get you through the sludge of Node-RED and get you up and running. So real quick, it was developed in 2013 by IBM. 3.1, I think 3.2 is the latest version of this presentation. It's built on JavaScript. I'm not a programmer. You don't have to be a programmer either. I did not go to school to be a programmer, but I have figured this stuff out. You can too. It's not that hard. It is basically, it runs on anything. So if you've got Windows, a Mac, Linux, Raspberry Pi, you can get this thing up and running. I would suggest getting a Raspberry Pi. I know that they're hard to get right now, but go ask your 12-year-old grandson or daughter or a technology person that's in your family. I'm sure that they've got a Pi that's laying around. I run some of mine on a Raspberry Pi Zero, those little bitty boards that you can get for $5. There's plenty of those laying around, so you can run this on basically anything and to get you up and running. Again, I'm not a programmer, but you can, if you've got some basic logic, like you need to get something out of your Elecraft KX3, and you know that it has a serial interface, and if I feed it a F, it's going to give me the frequency back through that serial interface. That's all you need. Once you start building these blocks and getting more experience, everything, it'll start to, the snowball will start to roll down the mountain. And that's what happened to me. I was very hesitant to get started, but then once I got into it and I figured out one thing, and then I figured out another thing and another thing. And then before you knew it, I was at 3 o'clock in the morning doing Node Red stuff because I had these ideas on, oh, now I can get my Flex to do this, and I can get my KX3 to do this, and it becomes very. You'll find that you start to build on your knowledge. You walk or you crawl, you walk, and then you run, right? So there's a ton of flows already out there. So if you don't want to program and you don't want to start from scratch, there's a ton of flows out there, and I'm going to show you how to load those flows. So don't get discouraged on, I'm not a programmer and Node-RED is not for me. That is not the case. So what can it control here? So it can control basically anything with an input or an output, a serial interface, an Ethernet, a USB. If you can get data out of that device somehow, you could probably get Node-RED to do something, to program, or to at least read it. You might not be able to get it to write stuff to it, but yeah, you'll at least be able to get information out of it. The Flex 6600s, the Elecrafts, and some of the ICOMs, they work flawlessly with this. They just work. There's nodes already built for those radios, especially the Flex 6600 and the Elecraft. Those are easy. But you can, if you've got a little bit of programming knowledge, you can get HamLab to talk to your radio. You know, there is some interfacing there that you can talk to HamLab or whatever you want to call it, and then it talks to your radio. But amplifiers, tuners, rotors, antenna switches, relays, anything that basically you have in your shack, you can control. So one of the things we do with Node-RED is automation. That is one of the things that is the big selling blocks with Node-RED. So put yourself in front of your radio and you're on 20 meters on single sideband, and let's all pretend that we're working DX and we find some DX station that is on 40 meters and it's CW. And we need to use you've got an amplifier. Think of all the things and all the buttons you need to press to get your radio from 20 meters single sideband to 40 meters CW. What is it, like 5 things? You have to do 7 things, 10 things. Node-RED can automate all of those things, every single one of those things. So it could be like literally one button press to go, or maybe 2, a band and a mode. And maybe you've got a preset in Node-RED that you can send to your radio to get you on, like in the general area of CW. I know that on my Flex, whenever I go from 20 meters to 40 meters, it's going to go to the last preset, and I might be on single sideband, but now I got to scroll all the way down to CW. So Node-RED can do all of that stuff, that automation, in basically one click. It also can give you real-time feedback. You can monitor everything in one location. I will show you this on my station. Command and control, custom alarms, and also eliminate errors. I don't know how many times that I have been in the contest station at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm running on 0 sleep, and I switch to a new band, and I forget to switch the amplifier over. And I'm trying to figure out why I'm not putting any power out, and I look over, I'm like, oh, I'm still on 20 meters on the amplifier. And I've been calling CQ for, the last 3 minutes and be like, I don't know what's going on. So again, one click, you can automate this stuff so it's easy and you can repeat it over and over, so you're not making mistakes. Custom alarms, I want to discuss. I'm working with the ARL to do some stuff. We're working with blind hams. And the one thing that Node-RED can do is it has a node that can talk to you. You feed it a script and it will say whatever you feed it. So just think, if I'm a blind ham and I don't have a radio that some of the Kenwoods I think have they're able
Kyle, somehow you got muted.
All right, you got me there?
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know whether I hit some.
Okay, gotcha. So, blind hams, right? They, what would be cool and what we're working on is if whenever you do a tune, it announces your SWR, or it announces that what band you're on, or it announces if your amplifier is on the wrong band. So those are some of the things that Node-RED can help you do. All right, how does this connect? So this is basically the board on how things connect into your shack. I'm going to go over a few of these because I think that they're pretty cool devices that you might want to take a look at to put in your shack. This right here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'm underneath the power supply, that Astron power supply. That plug device, that power strip, is a Digital Loggers Pro. Runs about $180. It is Ethernet and Wi-Fi based, and it is fully controllable through Node-RED. It has got 8 AC relays that you can control through Node-RED, and it's got 2 that are always on. Okay, we have a couple of these in our shack, in our remote station. It turns on power supplies. It turns on. It can reboot your Node-RED Raspberry Pi. It even has logic in it that it will go out and ping something on the internet. And if it cannot ping that device after 3 or 4 minutes, it automatically reboots that device. That is good on a remote station to go out and ping the internet. And if it can't ping the internet, reboot your WAN router, right? What's the first thing that your internet provider asks you if you don't have internet access? Have you rebooted your router? Well, this thing can automatically do it. Saves us a ton of drive time to go down to the contest station if we know that that router has been rebooted. Another cool device is this coax disconnect. This is a Paradan radio antenna disconnect. Basically, what this does is you give it, you connect your radios into one side. You connect. No, oh, did you hear that? Did that come over? No, it just told me. Node-RED just told me that there's lightning at the contest station. I will show you that. Actually, let me get into the. Oh, okay. We're gonna shut down. Here is what's coming. So hang on. So this actually, you know what? Let me show you what how I'm going to shut this down. Sorry guys, that let me shut down the contest station. Can I get to it? Here we go. Oh, this there we go. All right, can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is my Node-RED contest station. I'm going to go shut the station down. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of the flex, and so here is my flex on and off. So I'm going to turn my flex. So my flex is now shutting off. And then I'm going to turn the power supply off. So now the station is shut down. My flex is turned off. And you can see over here, I've got a flex LED, and it is telling me that the flex is turned off. This miscellaneous power supply also turns off that Paradan radio antenna disconnect. And for some reason, it was disconnected. Oh, I know I was disconnected because it's I have it. If there's lightning in the area, it automatically shuts down the station and disconnects the antenna. But anyway, so let's see. Let's monitor the weather and see if it passes by the time we get back up to the second part of this presentation. So anyway, this antenna disconnect. You apply power, apply 12 volts, and it connects your antenna. You disconnect 12 volts, and it disconnects your antenna. That is a great thing to do whenever, like, you're away from the station. A storm rolls through, just like it's doing at the contest station right now, and I'm able to disconnect the antennas and at least have some peace of mind that my antennas, are disconnected.
I actually use that device. It's really good.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people that have discovered those devices, and they're awesome. Again, a Raspberry Pi here in the center of things. It has an Ethernet cable. It's got a USB bus. It's got a serial in and out. So anything that comes off of these guys gets piped directly into the into the Raspberry Pi, and that's how Node-RED talks to it. This KM-Tronics also is a really cool device. This is an Ethernet-based relay. Normally closed, normally open. If you've got anything that you need relays for, this is the device is probably to get. You plug it on into Ethernet, plug it into 12 volts, and it is fully controllable by Node-RED. Some dashboard examples. So I've pulled these from the various people on the groups IO. I'll get to that in a minute, but here's some dashboard examples that you can take a look at. Again, these are all buttons that give you some statuses, real-time status. Here is some gauges, also LED lights. Some other buttons. I call this the Fruity Pebbles of, this is Alan, WD9 something UD. Can't remember Alan's call sign. But anyway, this is his control panel. This is Mike Walker, VA3 MW. That's his control panel. This is, let me let me shut this down here. This is an SWR sweep that somebody put together. So you feed it the band, and it will go through and sweep your SWR and actually give it to you in a graphical interface. Here is WO2X's control panel. You can see that he's got some flex stuff. He's got his rotor control that is a clickable map, and I'll show you that that we can. We've got a couple of those down at the contest station. Again, buttons, presets, the web power switch you see here, and then some more gauges, and then obviously his flex radio. Here is a 2-tower setup with, again, the clickable rotators, and then some power switches here, some buttons to turn things on and off, toggle switches, some presets. Again, more gauges here, SWR, forward power. It's got a Power Genius down here that, again, gives them some SWR and some temperature information. Here's a dashboard that has some CSS code to make it pretty and around the buttons. And here's some stuff that is not it's radio related, but it doesn't control an actual radio. So here is a map that I've pulled in, propagation map. You can do that. You can pull in a gray line. So these are just maps that I've pulled off the internet, and it scrapes the internet and pulls it off. Here is a weather widget that I've pulled off. Here is a DX cluster aggregate that I scrape all of the DX clusters and bring them into one telnet session, and I connect to my Raspberry Pi through N1MM, and I'm able to aggregate a whole bunch of DX clusters, and I do some filtering on this too. So if I'm on WPX, maybe I want to filter on some rarer spots and give those to me, I'm able to do that. And then here's a POTA dashboard that I'll show you. I brought that. It's another example. It maps all the POTA locations, so you can kind of see where people are doing POTA at. Here's my contest dashboard. This takes UDP information from N1MM and displays it in a bunch of different dashboard configurations. This is the main screen. You can see it maps your QSOs, gives you some information, your total score, does a running graph on your contest QSO rate, shows what the radios are doing, who's on the radio, what band they're on, what's their status. Here in the upper right-hand corner is, if you got a multi-op, it pairs everyone together in the multi-op. So let's say you've got 8 operators. It makes it a contest within a contest. So it's, V4P here is, he's got a run rate of 40, and he's in first place, but VE5MX might be right on his tail, and that might put VE5MX in the seat, get his butt in the seat more to maybe overtake V4P. So it's a contest within a contest. And then it integrates also with the online scoreboard, pulls some data from that, and also just maps a bunch of stuff about your radio and your bands. It's got multiple screens. If you want to know more about the contest dashboard, just search under my name in GitHub, and you can pull that down as a Node-RED flow. All right, let's take a look at this digital loggers. That's probably, if you're going to put something in your shack and you want to experiment with Node-RED, this is the first thing you get. This is an easy thing to get online. So this is what the Digital Loggers Pro looks like with the 8 switchable relays, AC relays, and then these 2 are always on at the number 9 and 10 here. And this is the flow that controls this. It basically kicks off every 3 or 4 seconds. It pings, or it pulls this device with a curl login or a curl statement. It gets the status. It splits the information into, these are the buttons that are programmed, and then it spits it back out and shoots it back into the device. These are the buttons. So these buttons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, these buttons in the dashboard that you saw in some of the examples correspond with these buttons right here. Those are the programming for this dashboard. Okay. Here's this KMtronics web relay. Talked about that on the list of devices that work seamlessly with Node-RED. Here's the flow. All of these flows are downloadable free off the groups IO. So this flow pulls the device every couple seconds. All that information on what the status is of all of these relays come into this junction box and get split out. These are grayed out because I'm not using these relays, but I'm using relay 1 and I'm using relay 8. So you can see relay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I've disabled these, but 1 and 8 are on, and these are the buttons that display this on the dashboard. Some other things you can do. You can monitor your Raspberry Pi. So I've wrote a bunch of flows that show your CPU temperature, your memory use, your disk space, your CPU, graphs your CPU usage, your CPU temperature, and you're able to reboot and shut down your Raspberry Pi from Node-RED. So these are the flows that do this work and display this on the dashboard. I'm not going to spend too much time on the Stream Deck. The Stream Deck is awesome. I've got one right here, right in front of me. This thing is a lifesaver. Kids have used the Stream Deck to stream, hence the name Stream Deck, to Twitch and YouTube, and this is how they switch their scenes and automate a bunch of the things that gamers do online. We have taken it and used it in the ham radio world and integrated it into Node-RED, so you can basically have hotkeys to do things that you would click on the website in your Node-RED web page, you can click on the Node-RED button and do the same thing. So it's sitting right next to you, and you've got all of these clickable buttons that have all of these LED screens that change when you click them to give you status of the things that are going on in your shack. So not only can you look at Node-RED and see what's going on in your shack, but you can program the buttons on the Stream Deck to give you statuses of what's going on. So it's a really cool device that works with Node-RED via a REST API and WebSockets to get that information. So if you want to know more about Stream Decks and Node-RED integration, Google that on YouTube or come over to the Groups IO and I'll show you where we hang out. Here are some of the screens and the different things you can make the LEDs look like. So, for example, this is the main screen that WO2X Dave has got. And whenever he clicks that FT8 button, which is down here in the lower left-hand corner, a new screen comes up. And these are the buttons that show whenever that FT8 button is pressed. And this is his FT8 Stream Deck screen. And then he can click on any one of these band buttons and change his radio automatically directly to the FT8 frequency, and put his flex in DigiU, right? And get everything set up automatically. So whenever he launches JWSJTX, it's all ready to go for him. He doesn't need to do anything. All right, some programming Node-RED dashboards. I'm going to this is the primer to get you up and running and to demystify all of the things that are a little crazy. But first, I want to see if there's any questions anybody have that wants to ask before we get into some of the dashboard stuff.
There was one question that you answered. Andy up in Iowa asked if you can shut down automatically if lightning's in the area, and of course, it did it automatically. So
yeah.
And then I was going to ask you about Stream Decks, and you answered that question for me. Anybody else have any questions? You can unmute and ask a question real quick.
Yeah. So Kyle, I think it's pretty cool that you can have different operators have different screens, but they essentially might do the same thing, right? But it's kind of customizable to the way that you want to see it. But it does similar things.
Well, yes. Yeah. So if you have a Node-RED instance, you can't customize. Well, I mean, you can't customize. Everyone has the same screen on their Node-RED server, but I think what I'm hearing and where you're going is, yeah, whenever you download Node-RED, if you want to customize your Node-RED service to whatever you want, yeah, the world is your oyster, right? You can move stuff around if you want to pull in a flow for an amplifier. You don't have to, or if you want to pull that amplifier flow in, but you want to customize it more to your liking because someone already did the groundwork, but now you want to make it even better, you can do that. Because all of the stuff is open source. There's no like you download the flow and import it into your Node-RED flow or into your Node-RED system, and then you can do whatever you want with it. I think I answered your question.
Yeah, you're good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's get into how do we start this thing? How do we get into the nitty-gritty here? So one command to install Node-RED on a Raspberry Pi. This is the easiest way. Is you go to that URL, and basically if you just type in Node-RED Raspberry Pi, it's going to take you to this page. It's on the Node-RED website. You type in that bash curl command, and it just installs. That's all you have to do. You don't have to get into sudo. You don't have to give yourself elevated privileges. You just type that command in and it works. That's the great thing about it. You can install it on Windows. There's a little bit of a trick to it. There is some documentation on this, the Node-RED website. The one thing that you have to remember if you're going to install this on Windows is you run this in a DOS screen and then it runs in the background, okay? If you close that DOS screen, Node-RED shuts down. So you can install it on Windows. Just there's been a couple of posts where people are like, my Node-RED service won't start on Windows. Well, they close the DOS screen. You know, they type in the command and they hit enter and it runs, and then they close the DOS screen, and of course the service shuts down. All right. After we're going to assume that you have a Raspberry Pi, but this is kind of universal too. If you run this on a Mac or a Windows, after you install Node-RED on a Raspberry Pi, there's two screens that you have to be aware about. The first one is the workspace web page, and the second one is the dashboard. The workspace is where you do all the configuration and all the programming, all the importing, all of that stuff gets done in the workspace. The second screen is where your dashboard is located at. That's the front end that's the business end, right? That's the pretty end of where you're going to click your buttons and make things turn on and off. So the workspace web page is, after Node-RED installs, it's going to install a web server on that device. Okay, you don't have to install a web server. It does it automatically. And then if you're on that same device, or if you're on a Raspberry Pi, you're going to go to the IP address of that Raspberry Pi :1880 to get to this workspace. Okay. To look at the dashboard, it's the same address. So maybe it's like 192.168.1.10 :1880, that's the port, /UI. And that's going to get you to the website of where your dashboard is located, okay? Where your buttons are, where your graphs are, where your gauges are at. All of that stuff is going to live there, okay? So remember that. So let's talk about the workspace for a minute. So this is your default place where you're going to program and import your nodes and do all your configuration. So there's a bunch of things that you need to be aware about. First is this workspace tabs. Just like Excel, you've got a bunch of different tabs that you can put different data on. If you have a bunch of different flows, I would probably put them on each tab. Like if you've got an Elecraft flow, put that on a tab that says Elecraft. If you got a KM-Tronics, the power switch with the 8 relays, put that on another tab. Like space it out so it has so you can troubleshoot it easily. Over here on the left-hand side is your node palette. Okay, these are where all the nodes go. Some are installed by default, and some you have to install off the internet. Okay, we're gonna get into that. You've got your main workspace here. That's where you put all your flows. That's where all your nodes get connected to one another. You've got a sidebar here, and the sidebar has many different aspects on it, and we're going to get into that a little bit. Also, for you non-programmers out there, if you install a flow from scratch, or you or program a flow from scratch, or you install a node or a flow from somebody gives you a flow and you import that flow, you have to deploy it. That's your compile button. Okay. So after you make any changes to your flows, after you've imported something, you've changed anything, you have to come up here and hit the deploy button. And basically that is going to deploy your flow to the dashboard and get your flows started and getting them running. Okay. So up here is that sidebar menu where my cursor is circling up here. So we're going to get into this for a little bit. So it's got a whole bunch of different buttons here. This project info, if you install projects in the start, that will show up. You've got help button. So if you need some help on a node, there's the help. A Git repository, if you've got that enabled also. Debug and dashboard. Those two buttons right here are the ones that you're going to spend all of your time in. Okay. Debug. You're going to put, there's nodes called debug nodes, and you connect those to flows, and it's going to show you debug information. Those are going to get you out of hot water. The dashboard layout. We're going to get more into the dashboard layout. This is where you configure your dashboard to make it look pretty and to rearrange some stuff. Configuration node settings, I really don't use that much. So I starting out, I wouldn't worry about it. And then also this local flows and global variables. You're probably not going to use that too much. You programmers out there, there are variables that you can store in global flow and global variable slots. So if you've got some advanced programming, you might want to take a look at that. But now that's the sidebar that is in this upper right-hand corner. Okay. So this is what a flow looks like that you might import that you know, you'll have in your Node-RED system. Okay, you've got a whole bunch of tabs up here with different flows. Here's some. You've got the nodes over here on the left-hand side. Here's your workspace with a flow for a. This is actually an antenna port. A 2x6 controller for a 6-pack, and then here on the right hand side here, I've enabled the debug, and I'm getting debug information coming out of that switch, out of that 6-pack, and this is what's actually getting passed between the nodes on where I put the debug information at. Okay. So let's talk about a flow. What does a flow mean? What do we talk about? So these are nodes. Nodes are connected by these lines. Usually they run left to right. And then information gets, nodes or flows are started, and they typically run over and over and over in a constant loop. Okay. It's typically what happens. So this flow here, let's talk about this flow. So this right over here is a trigger. It's an input. So it's starting the flow. Okay. So this node says run this flow every second, and it's just going to start the flow. This node is it's a serial node. It's going to go out, and let's say it's going to pull your Elecraft KX3 or your K3. Okay. It's going to go out, and it's going to pull the Elecraft radio for some information, and let's say it's going to go out and get the band and the mode of the current of what that radio is on. Okay, this is a switch node. The switch node will parse that information out and say, oh, this is the band info, and this is the switch info, or the mode info. If I see mode info, I'm going to bring it up to this branch, and I'm going to break this out even more and determine if it's single sideband, CW, or digital. And then if it is one of those modes, I'm going to break it out even more, and I'm going to set the mode to SSB. I'm going to set the mode to CW. I'm going to set the mode to digital. Same thing with the band. It comes in here, it gets switched and says this, and I'll show you the properties. It's going to say, oh, the band information comes down here. Then the band information, this switch node says, oh, what band are you on? And you can say, oh, I'm on band 160. And it's going to go out this wire here and get into this node. And then I'm going to say, all right, the band information is 160. And then that's all your contest bands. So it just gets switched over and over again and again to the correct band. And then these guys right here, these nodes over here are dashboard nodes. Those are the nodes that display the information on the dashboard. And these happen to be text-based or text box nodes. And all it's going to do is it's going to display SSB, CW, or digital, the words SSB, CW, or digital from these boxes into this mode. And it's just going to show what the mode is. Same thing with the band. It's going to set the band, let's say, to 160. This is a text box. It's going to display 160 in the band, this dashboard node. Okay. Don't confuse function nodes and nodes that do things, do some work, with dashboard nodes. These nodes over here in your palette, those are on the left-hand side, those are function nodes to do things, to start a flow, to connect a device, to receive or push information, to manipulate data, to debug. Dashboard nodes get information from something and display them on the dashboard. You can tell because all of the dashboard nodes are teal, okay? All of the function nodes are any color but teal. Let's see. K4DQP says, when you leave a debug node active, does it log the information and take up disk space? It does, yes. Actually, what happens is there's a buffer. And I think the buffer is 5,000 lines. So what it does is when the buffer fills up and you enable another debug node, it will start to debug, but then it'll start to disappear. So I just turn all of my debug nodes off if I'm not using them because, yes, it takes up disk space. But you can limit that disk space in the options information. All right. So now we're into the nitty-gritty of these nodes, right? So we talked about back here, we talked about this inject node, run every second. We talked about this switch node, break out the band. We talked about this is a change node. So we're going to change the payload and set the band information to 160. So now let's take a look at whenever you double click on these nodes, a dialog box comes up. And this is where you actually set the parameters for node red. Inject node. I want to start or inject a value into a flow, or I want to start a value. So what it does is I just, by default, I just say, oh, and inject a timestamp. And that's just a Unix timestamp. And you can see down here where it has a repeat. So if I want to restart a flow or start a flow every second, and pull something like my Elecraft radio every second, I would come in here and click the down arrow, and it would give me an option to say, oh, how many times you want to repeat this? I want to do it every second. Okay. A debug node. Here's what the default debug node properties look like. If you put this on a flow and connect it up into the output of a node, it's going to give you what that node is sending out. And by default, the information that comes out of that node, if you don't change it, is called message payload. That is just the information that comes out of a node, right? It could be band information, it could be text, it could be a number, it could be a Boolean, it could be a whole bunch of stuff. Typically, it is stored in a variable called message payload, okay? A switch node, it's just a big if then else statement. So remember we had the mode that we were trying to figure out what mode it was. So in this instance, we had message payload.mode. So that was the variable that we were looking at. And then it says if it equals CW, if it equals FT8, if it equals FT4, if it equals single sideband, if it equals PSK31. You can see where I've got, or otherwise, go out number 6 here. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 outputs. If I come down here, this is what this looks like. And you can see the 6 outputs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Lines up with the node. The change node. So we had a change node, set the band to 160. So if, for example, I'm kind of going off script here, but let's say the switch node said, oh, the mode is CW. So it would come out this top node or this top output, and it would, let's say, go into the change node. I would double click on the change node, drag it over to the palette, wire it up, double click on the change node, and then I would come in here and I would say maybe set message payload dot mode to the value of, let's say, CW. And then that would pass that on to the next node as a variable called message.payload.mode. Okay. Dashboard nodes. All right, so this is how you get information onto the dashboard. Okay. This is a text node. Text node has parameters that you can double click on this node. The text box comes up and you can feed it information. Okay. So this is the label. You can give it a label, you can give it a value, you can make it look pretty. Here's a button. So you can put a bunch of buttons on there. And once you click the button, it might send a payload to say true or false or 30 meters or whatever. A gauge. Again, you double click on the gauge node and you can give it some parameters. And the type, there's a bunch of drop downs here. I've did a screenshot of gauge. This is a gauge. So it's going to bring in message payload and it's going to do a color gradient of 1 to 100. And I can put in here 0 to 50 is green, 50 to 75 is yellow, and then 75 to 100 is red. And it'll automatically give, change color as the value changes. Okay. I talked about debugging. There was a question about the debugging node. So this is how you, you can wire up debug nodes and turn them on and off. So here is how you turn them on and off. These two are on, this one is off. You can see that you can click these debug nodes or these on-off buttons, and it will change and tell you which debug node is on and off. Okay. So we talked about the palette back here, right? So you've got the palette of all your nodes. So let's say you import a flow and you don't have the right nodes installed. Okay. What you have to do is, well, first let's import a flow. Okay. So there's a hamburger menu up here beside the deploy button. Click the hamburger menu and that's going to have a drop down. And what you can do is you can come in here to import and it's going to give you this screen. And this is where you go out to your computer and all of the flows, whenever they're exported, are in JSON format. Okay, it's just a file with the extension of JSON format. Then you would come in here to the hamburger menu, click the import button. This screen will pop up, and then you can import that JSON flow file into your Node-RED instance. Okay. After you do that, let's say you've got some nodes that somebody used that you don't have in your palette. So now you have to install those missing nodes into your palette. Well, then you come back here to the hamburger menu, you'd come down to Manage Palette, and then click on the palette view here, and click on the install and search for that node name that is missing, and it will tell you what is missing. And then you can install that. You just hit the install button here and it automatically installs. Goes out to the internet, finds it, and brings it in. Here I've typed in the word Morse code and looks like somebody has made a Morse code node that you can install. I'm not sure what it does though. All right, Almost done. We're talking about dashboard tabs and groups. And this is what's the whole out of this whole thing, this is the most confusing part. So Node-RED dashboards, remember 192.168.1.10:1880/UI. Okay, that's the website that we're going to. This is what you're looking at day in and day out. Okay, there are tabs, there are groups, and there are dashboard nodes. Okay, that's the hierarchy. Tabs, dashboard nodes go into groups. Groups go into tabs. Okay. So if you want another tab, you can click on the tab. Well, first, let me go back. Remember, this is the sidecar where all those buttons are. There's the debug. If you click on the ones that got the bars, that's going to bring up this sidebar, and it's going to display what your dashboard currently looks like. Okay. If you want a new tab, you click on the tab, the plus tab. If you want to create a new group within that tab, you click on the plus group. And then to look at the layout of what that tab looks like, which is you could have many groups within that tab, you click on the layout, and that's going to give you a graphical representation of what that tab looks like. Okay. So let's take a look at some of these tabs and groups. For example, if I click the hamburger menu on my dashboard, it's going to give me the list of all the tabs that I've created. Okay. In this example, I've got many tabs. I've got E-layer command and control. I've got radio B shack control, DX cluster, FR stack, slices, camera feed. If I click that hamburger menu, those are the options that I would see in that dropdown. Okay. So this just shows you that the name of the tab is the tab that shows up in the dropdown menu. Okay. You can also see I'm going to get into this a little bit more, but these are groups within the E-layer command and control tab. So I've got a group called Raspberry Pi status and control, a group called power switch miscellaneous, flex power, web relay. What happens, or see how this lines up? Raspberry Pi status and control, Raspberry Pi status and control, power switch miscellaneous, power switch miscellaneous, flex power, flex power. These are dashboard nodes. If I clicked on the down arrow, you would see these dashboard nodes in this group. Okay. So remember I said to click on the layout to look at a graphical interface of what this looks like, you can click this layout button that's highlighted in green. Once you do that, this shows up. And this is where the really cool power comes in on rearranging your dashboard nodes. This is a graphical interface of what all of those dashboard nodes look like and the spacing and how big or small they are in your dashboard. And this is where you can resize them and make them bigger or smaller depending on how you want your dashboard to look. Okay. The nice thing is you can drag and drop these things all over the place and they just resize. Okay. But you got to be a master in Tetris sometimes to figure out how all this stuff gets populated. But once you get the hang of it, then you start to resize stuff and go, okay, I understand now. Okay. So let's take a few minutes on groups. Okay. So this is a group called Raspberry Pi status and control. And I've lined up what the dashboard looks like to what the graphical interface looks like in the dashboard. Okay. So I've got a dashboard node called CPU temperature, and it's a gauge. This is what it looks like in the graphical user interface. This is what it looks like in the dashboard. You can see how this lines up with my different dashboard nodes. CPU temperature, memory used, disk space, CPU. Here's a chart that I've dropped in here, and it's CPU temperature. It's got a value of looks like four by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 wide and 4 down. I forgot what the down is called. But anyway, you can see this has got the same spacing on the dashboard as my graphical user interface, or my my layout here in the dashboard. Here's my reboot button. There's my reboot button, my shutdown button. Same thing over here. I've got an weather for E-layer. It's got a width of 6. All of these have a width of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's a text box that says what the weather is, current weather is, what the weather details are. Here is the wind direction, and that's a 100 or a 360 degree gauge. Here's a wind speed gauge, outside temperature, a chart, an LED, a switch, shut down if thunder. So you can see how you can build your dashboards to make them look like you want them to. SVG elements, not going to do a lot with this, but you can, this is how we do our rotator control. And you can, click on this map. It's a clickable map, and it's a automated, or it's a map that has things that show your real-time information, and it's not like a button where it just turns red or green. It's you can click on these things and actually manipulate things on the back end by clicking on the graphic, and I'll show you that in the rotators. Another thing that, if you're taking notes, the first thing you want to do after you installed Node-RED is you want to go down to your hamburger menu, go to Manage Palette, and you want to install the default dashboard. Okay, this is not installed by default. Don't ask me why, I don't know, but it's a pain in the butt. And this gets new users all the time. Go down to your hamburger menu, go to Manage Palette, and then search for Dashboard, and install this Node-RED dashboard. That is your first thing you do after a new install of Node-RED. No ifs, ands, or buts. You have to do this. I don't know why they make it default, but they don't. All right. We've been talking about this for a while. Where to start? Node-RED.org. That's the information. I mean, there's a plethora of information. If you don't know anything about programming and you want to know how nodes, more about message payload and how to pass information from node to node using that message payload, the documentation here is amazing. It breaks it down. It's very easy. If you get stuck on something that is Node-RED related, but not really ham radio related, these forums are great. People hang out there all the time. I've asked many questions there, and people have gotten back to me within, it's sometimes a couple of minutes. It's great. Some resources here. So we've got some cookbooks, some forums, again, node-red.org. They've got a YouTube page. It's very technical. For you that are programmers, you'd probably, nerd out on it and find it interesting. It's very, very technical. So if you want some more information about Node-RED, this Opto video is great. This is a great YouTube channel. He breaks down how to do dashboards, how to do switches. He even gets into arrays and objects and JSON data. It's great. So if you want to get some more information, that Opto video is really good. There's a Reddit out there. It's got some good stuff, but this is the holy grail right here, this groups.io. So that's where you want to go to get to hang out with all the people that are doing Node-RED for ham radio. That's where we hang out, and that's where we talk and help each other out for the things that we're doing daily in Node-RED. So just type in Node-RED ham radio groups.io. It'll take you right to it. Sign up. join the group. I think there's like 1,700 people that are in the group, and it's a daily conversation. This is what the group's IO looks like. For those of you who've joined the group and you want to load flows, like you're not a programmer, but you want to get your Flex radio or your KX3 or your Elecraft, your ICOM radio up and running, the flows that people have built and publicized, they're in the files section. Go out there, take a look at, browse, search for your radio, search for your amplifier. It's probably a flow already made for it if it's got an input or output. So that's where all the files and all the JSON files are located. As of about a year ago, this is all of the items that have flows already pre-built for them. Okay, so maybe you see some of the stuff that you've got in your shack on this list. Securing Node-RED. This is my slide to tell you that Node-RED is insecure. Okay, don't run this on the internet. Don't expose it to the internet. If you need to get to it from the outside, use a VPN or do SSH port forwarding and do something along those lines. Don't expose Node-RED to the internet because bad people will do bad things to it. I'm going to skip over that slide. If you want some more information about Node-RED, I've got a playlist on getting a Raspberry Pi up and running, some prep work, installing Node-RED on a Raspberry Pi, installing your first flow. I go through that Digital Loggers Web Pro switch in detail. I do some information about common nodes, question and answers. I've got a bunch of other videos on Node-RED. So if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I've got, like I said, a bunch of Node-RED stuff. I'm going to skip over Dave's video here. But yeah, that is it. K4DQP says, another question regarding ports.
Hey,
Yes.
Kyle, awesome presentation. And I saw some really amazing stuff there that I hadn't seen before. So thank you for that. So my question is, you know, I don't know if the FTDX10, you can read data off the FTDX10, but assuming that you're using a radio that is already connected, say, to N3FJP, right, through a port.
Yep.
How does Node-RED, or is Node-RED going to interfere, or is it going to get locked out of interfacing with that radio via the same port, or how does that work?
Yeah. So if you've got, just like anything else, if you've got that port occupied, it's not gonna like it, right?
Are there ways to get around that, or you know?
So yeah, so in the in the Flex world, you can have as many connections as you want to that Flex because it's just an API call, right?
Right.
In the what you could do is you could, so N3FJP is a different beast because they do have an API, but the way that they implement their API, it's a little confusing. We're actually working with them on the contest dashboard. So, but if you're running N1MM, what you can do is N1MM sends out the radio information, basically all the CAD information through UDP. And you can grab all of that information from N1MM through the UDP packets and get information that what your radio is doing from N1MM. Same thing with, that's the same thing like the Green Heron stuff does, right? Green Heron listens on the UDP network. You know, UDP is inherently send and forget, but it just listens for those UDP packets on where you want to turn the rotator or what antenna switch do you want to switch to and what band, right? It sends the band information and decodes that and switches the antenna. So you're right. Typically, if you have things that are occupying that port, it's just like anything else. You got to find a way to to get that information out, maybe a different way, or maybe you have a device that might replicate that CAD information and send it back out on the wire.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me bring up the contest station. So I showed this before. All right. So here is my POTA map, and you can see that these are all the locations that are activating POTA right now. And if you scroll down, here is all of the spots. And this gets refreshed every minute. So I've got a refresh counter. So it looks like it's going to refresh here in about 6 seconds. Oh, sorry, guys. So here comes a whole new mess of data on all of the spots that are being activated. And then it maps it up here on the map. This is nice whenever you've got a beam and you want to figure out where all the POTA stations are being activated and where to point the beam, right? Because a lot of times, whenever you look at the POTA website, you just look at the call sign and the frequency, and I really don't look at what state it is. And if somebody's out California, granted, they probably might have a 6 call, but not always. Here is the contest station. So let me take a look at the radar here. So somebody asked for lightning. So up here in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that there is lightning. Oh, see, so it just turned green. So that means the latest lightning strike around the area was less than 20 or more than 25 kilometers. Here, we just had a lightning strike at the contest station that was less than 5 kilometers away. And you guys didn't hear it, but I got an audible alarm that said lightning close to the station, please shut down. And actually what happens is whenever that goes off, this miscellaneous power supply is connected to my Paradan radio or my Paradan disconnect, and it automatically disconnected it. So then let's go to the rotators and the antenna switches. So here's our 3 towers at the contest station, and so let's go to tower 1. That's the XR5, the 80 meter vertical, and the 30 meter beam. Okay, so let's say I don't have my radio on because it's lightning there, but let's say I want to switch antenna 1 on my flex to tower 1 on the 6-pack. So I'm going to click that button. I just switched my antenna to tower 1. Okay. So then once we switch the tower, then we've got an RCS 4 that switches the antenna out at the base of the tower, right? So now radio A, that gets switched to tower 1. So now I want to, let's say, switch to the 30 meter beam. I click the 30 meter beam. Now I'm the 30 meter beam. Okay. So let's say I want to point the 30 meter beam to Europe. So now I click on somewhere close to Europe, and now the rotator is rotating. Just enabled the brake, and now I just rotated the rotator. That station is about 2 hours away from me. I'm sitting in St. Louis proper. It's down close to the Boot Hill of Missouri. And now I just get into my flex, and I'm able to, do CW, do single sideband here at the house, and connect it remotely. That's how I contest sometimes. I sit here down here in my station, down on my streaming computer, and work contests off one of the beams. It's nice. It's great. Let's see what else.
Hey, Kyle, before you jump onto something else.
Yep.
So with the contest station, when we discussed this a little bit, we're trying to remote our 6400 for club use and for some other things like STEM and STEAM. With all those rotators, we get 2 towers and all of that. is that dashboard something we can host and people can VPN into it?
Mhm.
Okay, so we could set it up at the clubhouse. Somebody doesn't have to download it to their computer.
Nope.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah. One of the things I keep forgetting, because it's just it's impaled in my brain that I keep forgetting to tell people, is so you run Node-RED on a Raspberry Pi. Whenever you install Node-RED, it installs a web server. Okay. Then this is just a website, right? You point your browser to that website and the dashboard comes up. If you have anybody who has access to that Node-RED server via VPN, via SSH port forwarding, somehow securely to get in, because you don't want to expose, you don't want to port forward, port 1880 from your outside of your router into your internal network, because I guarantee you, if you do that, somebody will hack into it and blow away all of your flows, right? Because there's no security. You can put security stuff on it, but it's not very secure. So the way that we do it is I SSH. So here, I SSH into my Pi down at the contest station, and I'll show you. Let's pull up a new station. So I've configured PuTTY here. And if I load elayer, so elayer.aa0z.com, and I have I don't put it on port 22, which is SSH. I put it on port 1234. If I come in here into the tunnels, you can see that I have made a tunnel from port 1880 on my local host, and it tunnels into 192.168.100.20 port 1880. So whenever I SSH into my Pi down at the contest station, and you can see up here, localhost.1880, anything that goes into port 1880 at my computer automatically gets forwarded down to the contest station and goes to that 192.168.100.20 machine and pulls up whatever is on port 1880.
Gotcha.
So that's how we get away with not giving VPN access out. But then the cool thing about that is you can set up different usernames on this Raspberry Pi and give them access, and you give them access to SSH, and then, let's say they do bad things, well, you can revoke their privileges, just like, VPN, you set up VPN users, and, but sometimes VPN goes a little squirrely. So, but people have had a lot of experience with that Tailscale. That's something that people have used quite a bit with Raspberry Pis and Node-RED. So Tailscale is one. Also, if you're going to remote your system, what I would do is get a good remote desktop. So this is my Flex 6700 PC down at the contest station. And sometimes I just remote into this. And this is just Chrome remote, right? On my login, my Gmail login. And so this is how I sometimes do digital, right? Do digital locally there. And so I can bring up the Node-RED stuff down there in this browser. It's a little slower, but see?
Cool.
And then I can change. So I'm changing, back to the XR5 beam. So if I come over here to my Node-RED and get into the dashboard, let's get into the dashboard again. The XR5 beam.
Gotcha.
Is selected. So anything that anybody who is into that Node-RED server. Hang on, I gotta kill this this lightning alert. So also, Node-RED is a never-ending thing, right? Once you get Node-RED to a point where you're like, okay, I'm done, and then you learn about something else and be like, oh, I got to do that, right? So it's always a work in progress, but yeah.
And I'm sure you have a way to lock it out, so if somebody's using it, somebody else can't get into it and knock them out. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the big things we're working with, is trying to figure out scheduling and lockouts and those kind of things.
Actually, somebody, hang on. Let's see, ham radio. Somebody, why am I not logged in? Flex radio schedule. Yes. This Cowtown Amateur Radio Club has already figured this out for you, John.
Freaking sweet.
So what they've done is they have like some, let's, because I asked him. Oh, okay, yeah. So he has, I made a short video describing how the dashboard works, the second half. So this is like scheduling people to get on the radio, and then once their scheduled time is off, it kicks them out.
Sweet. Craig, you taking notes?
Yeah, so Mike,
Thank you.
KF5DEY is the guy that you want to talk to.
Great. Fantastic.
He's already done the work for you.
Great. Fantastic. Anybody have any other questions for Kyle?
Trying to find some other stuff that that we've done. Darcy was asking about web scraping. So this is this this QSO party, real quick. This QSO party hub, and here's our QSO party spotting page. So you can come in here and Whiskey Zero Whiskey 14200. I'm in Boone County, SSB now, and then Whiskey 1AW. So you can post this, right? So it gives a spot for our QSO party, which is actually next weekend. So then I have a flow here. Let's turn on the debug here, and you can see it's going to pull this QSO party hub. So if I double click on the QSO party hub, I fed it the PHP website, and it's going to scrape this website, I think every 30 seconds, maybe 29 seconds. All right, so here's a good example of scraping a website. So I go down, and what I did on this QSO party website was you can go into the actual, you can come in here to, actually I hit just F12, and it'll give you all of this information, on what the HTML looks like. Okay. So then I figure out what table I need to parse. So the table is called T-body, TR age, 1BG, and this is the table that I'm parsing. So I grab all that information, I split it, I do some work with it, I break it out into date, call, frequency, county, comment, poster, and then I put it into a JSON format and send it out. So I think I turned, not really sure what I turned on here. I think I turned on this one. But anyway, so this is the raw data that it goes and gets. It gets the time, the spot, the frequency, the county, the comment, and then the poster, and displays them. This is the debug. So actually, let me clear this debug and let me turn on this record to spot. So coming out of this node, will hopefully let's
Oh, you forgot to deploy it.
oh yeah, let's deploy that. Well, so here's the spot. Here's the date, here's the call, here's the frequency, here's the county, here's the comment, and here's the poster.
Wow.
So then what we do is I take all that stuff and I parse the band, and then I have a table here that sends it over to, this is a link out, and I send it over to the database. I can click on this database, and what this does is, this is my QSO party helper. This is my QSO party cheat sheet, and this basically spots my roamers, spots my or not spots it, but it tells me who's roaming, who's activating in the counties, who's in Missouri, who's not in Missouri, and then eventually it comes out to these telnet nodes, and I can connect to my different telnet clusters. So it formats the spot in the exact same format as you see in the DX clusters. So it says DE, this is AA0Z, puts the frequency, the call, the county, the comment, and the time, and then it pipes that out to telnet. And then whenever I connect to my Pi on port 7400, it looks like a DX cluster. And I just point my node, or I'm sorry, I point my N1MM to my different clusters here, and then I bring up the band map, and then I just click through the spots that are just in Missouri and just work them.
Oh, that's cheating, man.
No, it's not.
All right, shooting fish in a barrel. How's that?
It's shooting fish in a barrel.
Fishing with dynamite.
Right, exactly. So this is my this is a bunch of other stuff that I've done for Missouri QSO Party, but this is all the things that flows that I've written to look at rovers, look at in-state, look at wanted state. So let's say Hawaii pops up, right? And let's say Hawaii is on a POTA. I'm pulling the POTA page too. Well, I need Hawaii for my QSO party, right? Because it's a multiplier, right? So I see Hawaii. Oh, I'm going to go out and get Hawaii.
Damn.
So
I don't know if I
anyway.
have time for anything else.
This took a lot of 3 a.m. calls and a lot of Mountain Dew and Red Bull.
I hear you.
But at Red Bull at my age, that'll kill you. So anyway, that's Node-RED in a nutshell. Is there anything else?
I don't seem to be popping in with anything.
Yeah, so Kyle, I actually have something very similar here that I've done, but instead of a digital map, it actually pushes it out to neopixels, and each state gets lit up with POTA spots. So
okay,
yeah, it's just you've got a digital map, I've got a physical map, so
yeah.
Which is really cool. I don't know, maybe you want to show the flows and maybe the different outputs that you can send to, like serial ports and LEDs or whatever. I mean, they're constantly adding to this stuff, which is just amazing,
Yeah. So let's just real quick, I will show you how easy it is. Let me get into my test 192.168.1.116. So let me pull over. This is just some miscellaneous flows that I've created. So let's create a new tab, and let's call this tab YCARS. So now, to start programming a flow, I need an inject node, and let's say I want to start this flow. I'm just going to inject a timestamp. Doesn't really matter what you do, but and I'm going to inject this flow once a second. Okay. So then let's for grins here, let's put a debug node on that, and let's see what's coming out of that timestamp. All right, so let's deploy this. Never mind, I've got errors on this other stuff, but you can see how this timestamp is coming out every single second, and this is Unix timestamp. Okay, so now let's unwire that and deploy that. So now let's wire in this change node, and let me double click on this change node, and let's call this change name. Okay. So now we're going to say set message payload. That's the default payload to the value of John. Okay. So now this timestamp is injecting a this inject node is injecting a timestamp, but it really doesn't care because it's going to throw away that timestamp, and it's going to change message payload, which is the default payload, to the value of John. Okay, so now whenever we wire this up and we hit the deploy button, hopefully we are going to see John, right? So that's kind of how, and then I'm going to turn this debug off, and then my debug stopped. Okay. So then what we can do is let's come down here and let's bring this into a dashboard node. So now I'm going to wire this into a dashboard node, and if I double click on this dashboard node, let's assign this to AA0Z trivia. Okay. The label, I'm going to say name, and the value, this is called mustache notation, but basically it's going to take that value format of message payload, because that's what we're sending. And if I look into group tab trivia, group AA0Z trivia, I'm going to see this text box push the name John into that text box. Okay. So now I'm on the workspace. Now I need to go, and you can do that from this sidebar. If I click on my dashboard, here's all my different dashboards here. But if I go to the tab trivia into the group AA0Z trivia, see this text box was the one I added. So let's name this text box. Let's call this John's text box. If I click done, oh, it's the wrong one. Sorry, guys. It was this one, John's text box down here. Okay, so I need to redeploy this. Confirm deploy. Never mind those errors. So now I can go into this. I call it the yeet button. I don't know what it's called, but it's I call it the yeet button. So now if I do the yeet button, here is some more nodes that I put together, but look at down here. Here's my text box that I just deployed. Here's the label. Here's John. Okay. So now let's go and do another timestamp real quick. Another inject, and I'm going to copy this node, bring this back down here, and I'm going to make this one Kyle. Okay. And then I'm going to bring this, connect this together, and I'm going to say, do this once every, let's say, 2.5 seconds. And then I'm going to wire this into the same text box. Okay. And now I'm going to call this John and Kyle text box. Okay. Now I'm going to deploy this. If I go back to the dashboard, hopefully this is going to change between Kyle and John. See how it's changing between Kyle and John?
Yeah.
So I just built a flow with some dashboard stuff and deployed it, and I'm done.
Wow. That's quick.
Yeah. So that's how easy it is to deploy some of this stuff. And you really don't need a programming background because it's all kind of laid out for you right there.
It's logic.
It's logic. You just have to put on your logic hat and say, all right, I need A, I've got B, but I need to calculate C and show that on the dashboard. How do I get to that point, right?
Way cool.
Okay.
Any other questions, folks? Don't be shy.
if you have questions, I'm on the internet. I'm on QRZ. Shoot me an email. Send me. I'm on Discord. I'm on all the big Discords. If you've got questions and you can't figure them out, email me. Get me on Discord. I'll zoom in. We'll do a Zoom. I'll get you up and running. Go to the groups IO. Ask your questions there. If I'm not available, Dave, WO2X, Alan, Greg, all of those guys are awesome over there, and they've got a lot more time than I do to zoom in and get you straightened out. But I'm always here to help, especially with new people on getting them up and running, because the stuff is not intuitive. But after you get, it's like you don't know what questions to ask, and then once you get shown what to do, you're like, I understand now. I get it. And you just need to be shown once, and then you're off to the races.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Kyle, for taking your time and doing this for us. A lot of light bulbs went off in my head in this, and I'm sure Darcy feels the same way. And I'm sure Craig is like drinking from a fire hose right now. And
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem. Again, that groups IO is great. So if you get stuck and need assistance, it's a good group.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm
found it, and I found the post you were looking at.
Yeah. Yep. Good.
Well, if nobody has anything else, we'll let Kyle get on his way. I'm sure he's ready for dinner by now. And
I'm a little hungry.
And the storms are passing, so he's probably going to go out there and chase Sable Island. One quick announcement. David sent an email out. I forwarded it to the whole club. The exercise for Saturday has been canceled due to weather. So they're going to reschedule, I think April 22nd is the tentative date right now. So just keep alert. You'll get the information on the weekly YCARS update. So anyways, again, thank you so much, Kyle. We really do appreciate it. And we're going to put this on YouTube, so it'll be up in a couple days. And we can't thank you enough for helping us out.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. YCARS is an awesome group. I hear about it all the time through different channels. I didn't know that it was such a prolific group, and didn't make the connection between Darcy and John and all the guys that I meet at Hamcation. That is one of my favorite ham fests to go to. I love the camaraderie and how you guys have just welcomed us in down there, and it's awesome. It's I always look forward to coming down there and hanging out with you guys. You guys are a fun group.
Well, if you're not doing anything the first weekend in October, you can always come to Rock Hill, and we'll put you at our ham fest.
Oh, well, actually, you know what? It's the first weekend in October.
Yep.
Hang on. You know what? See, I'm gonna be on that side of the country, but I'm going to an Overland Expo in Virginia.
Gotcha.
Or I would be there. I would totally be there.
I hear you. Well, next year we're all be there.
Yes.
I'll be up in Dayton too. So if you're going to be there, I'll catch up with you in Dayton.
Yep, I will be there.
You can always find us on the bands too, Kyle.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kyle actually worked me from the Battleship North Carolina when I pulled off that pop-up the other day.
Nice.
Oh, very good.
Cool. All
Hey,
right.
Kyle, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. It's always fun
Thank
time
you.
with you guys.
Good night,
Thank you very
everybody.
All
much.
right, bye-bye.
Bye.